The stars had long since moved past the age of humanity. Their great civilizations had crumbled, their worlds abandoned, and their presence in the galaxy reduced to legend. To most, humans were nothing more than a footnote in history, an ambitious but reckless species that burned too brightly and vanished too soon. But to Ryn Vallis, they were something else. He was a relic hunter, one of the few who still sought out the artifacts of lost species, and for years he had pursued the fading echoes of humanity. His latest lead had brought him to an uncharted system on the fringes of the galactic core, where a derelict planet lay untouched for millennia. As his ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, the ruins of a civilization emerged from beneath the clouds. Towering structures, now overgrown with alien flora, stood as silent testaments to a people who had reached for the stars and disappeared. Ryn guided his ship through the dense fog that clung to the decayed cityscape. The ancient roads, cracked and weathered, were barely visible beneath layers of vines and twisted roots. He landed on what looked like the remains of a plaza, its former purpose lost to time. Stepping onto the surface, his boots crunched against debris, shattered glass, rusted metal, remnants of a world. The atmosphere was breathable but thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. He adjusted his scanner, its screen flickering as it searched for power signatures. Somewhere in these ruins, something was still active. Something human. The planet's silence was unsettling. Even in abandoned worlds, there were usually remnants of life, scavengers, vermin, perhaps an automated security system still clinging to a protocol. But here there was nothing. No movement, no signs of habitation. Only the wind, whispering through the skeletal remains of skyscrapers. Ryn advanced cautiously, his hand hovering near his sidearm. He had encountered ruins like this before, but something about this place felt different. It felt preserved, as if waiting. His scanner beeped, a faint energy reading blinking across the screen. He followed the signal deeper into the city, weaving through broken corridors and crumbling archways. The reading grew stronger as he neared what appeared to be a massive domed structure, ending centuries of debris. A grand library, perhaps a center of knowledge. Its entrance was sealed, but Ryn had spent his life breaking into places like this. He set down his pack, retrieved his plasma cutter, and began working on the ancient lock. As he cut through layers of metal and stone, his mind drifted to the stories he had heard about humanity. Tales of their wars, their inventions, their insatiable curiosity. Most species feared them, not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they were unpredictable. They adapted, they endured. And yet they were gone. He had always wondered how a species so determined could simply vanish. Perhaps within these walls, he would find his answer. The final layer of the door crumbled away, and with a groan, the massive structure slid open. Stale air rushed out, carrying with it the scent of ancient paper, rust, and something else, something faintly metallic. He stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Shelves upon shelves of preserved records lined the walls, but it was what stood at the center of the room that made him freeze. A massive vault door, untouched by time, its mechanisms still intact. His scanner flared, detecting a power source deep within. Ryn approached cautiously, running his fingers over the markings etched into its surface. And like the rest of the city, this place had been deliberately sealed, protected. Whatever was inside had been meant to last. He retrieved his tools and began the slow process of bypassing its security protocols. Minutes stretched into hours as he worked, carefully navigating the ancient technology. Whoever had built this had wanted to ensure it was never opened by accident. But Ryn was patient. He had spent his life searching for relics, uncovering secrets that had been lost to time. Finally, with a quiet hiss, the vault unlocked. The doors groaned as they parted, revealing a chamber bathed in golden light. At its center stood a stasis pod, its glass panel covered in layers of frost. And inside, impossibly, was a human. Ryn staggered back, his heart pounding. He had expected relics, records, perhaps an artificial intelligence holding fragments of their history. But this was something else entirely. This was not a fossilized remnant or a mere recording. This was a living, breathing specimen of a race thought to be long extinct. The pod's readouts showed that it had kept its occupant in perfect suspended animation for thousands of years. The question was why? And who were they? He stepped closer, studying the figure within. They were male, their features unfamiliar yet undeniably human. Their chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths, their skin untouched by the ravages of time. Ryn hesitated, his mind racing with the implications. If one human had survived, could there be others? Could this man hold the key to understanding what had happened to his species? His fingers hovered over the activation panel. A part of him hesitated. Waking something from the past was always dangerous. But he had come too far to turn back now. Taking a deep breath, he pressed the release sequence. Gears turned, ancient mechanisms hissed, and the pod began to open. The human inside gasped awake, eyes fluttering open, confusion and panic flashing across their face. Ryn raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "You are safe," he said slowly, adjusting his translator. The human blinked, his breathing steadying as he took in his surroundings. "Where am I?" His voice was hoarse, his words weighted with the gravity of centuries lost. Ryn swallowed. "You are on Yeor, or what's left of it." The human's expression shifted from confusion to something else, determination. "Then I have work to do." Ryn had expected fear, despair, maybe even disbelief. But what he saw in the man's eyes was something far more dangerous. Purpose. Navigating through the crumbling streets, Ryn marveled at the architecture, so different from the sleek designs of the current galactic powers. The structures were robust, built for endurance, not just function. He activated his scanner, searching for whatever artifact still pulsed with energy. His search led him into the depths of what had once been a grand library, now beneath the weight of time. Inside, among the dust and decay, he found it, a massive vault door, its mechanisms still operational. With careful precision, he bypassed its ancient security protocols, and as the doors groaned open, a golden glow illuminated the chamber within. It was a stasis pod, and inside, impossibly, was a human. Ryn staggered back in disbelief. This was not a fossilized remnant or a mere recording. This was a living, breathing specimen of a race thought to be long extinct. The pod's readouts showed that it had kept its occupant in perfect suspended animation for thousands of years. The question was why? And who were they? He took a moment to absorb the gravity of what he had uncovered. His fingers hovered over the pod's control panel as he examined the inscriptions surrounding it. The symbols were clearly human, yet slightly altered, as if written in a dialect that had evolved past known records. There was a finality to them, a warning that the occupant of the pod was meant to be awakened only under the direst circumstances. Despite the eerie implications, Ryn knew there was no turning back now. He had spent years searching for relics of humanity, never expecting to find one still alive. This discovery could change everything. He carefully keyed in the activation sequence. The pod hummed to life, its mechanisms whirring as they completed the process of waking its occupant. Ice crystals flaked away from the glass as the warmth of reanimation coursed through the chamber. Then with a slow hiss, the pod's seal broke, and the human inside inhaled their first breath in thousands of years. Their eyes fluttered open, and focused and filled with confusion. Their body trembled slightly as they adjusted to the unfamiliar environment. Ryn kept his hands visible, his stance. "You're safe," he said, carefully adjusting his translator to ensure clarity. The human blinked, his gaze slowly sharpening as he took in the dimly lit chamber. "Where am I?" he rasped, his voice raw from disuse. "This is Yeor," Ryn answered. "Or what's left of it." The man's expression darkened as he pushed himself upright, scanning the decayed remains of what had once been a magnificent repository of knowledge. "How long?" he asked. Ryn hesitated. "Thousands of years," he admitted. "Humanity, it's gone. Or at least, no one has seen a living human in centuries. For a long moment, the man sat in silence, absorbing the weight of those words. Then, to Ryn's surprise, his hands curled into fists, not with despair, but with purpose. Then I have work to do, he said firmly. There may be others. Ryn studied him closely, noting the way his jaw set with determination rather than defeat. You think there are more survivors? He asked, cautious but intrigued. The human, who introduced himself as Daniel Kade, nodded. If this pod was activated, then there were others. The preservation project wasn't designed to save just one person. It was meant to safeguard knowledge, to ensure that if we fell, we could rise again. Ryn's mind reeled at the possibility. If there were more stasis pods, if humanity had left behind more than just ruins and echoes, then the implications were staggering. We need to find them, Daniel continued. Before time does what our enemies could not. The relic hunter couldn't deny the weight of the moment. For years he had scoured the galaxy for fragments of the past, never expecting to uncover a living piece of it. And now he found himself at the precipice of something far greater than he had ever imagined. Then we begin now, Ryn said, offering his hand. Daniel clasped it firmly, his grip strong despite the millennia of stillness. Let's go find my people. As they left the vault, the libraries, systems flickered to life one last time, as if the planet itself had been waiting for its lost children to return. With a cautious breath, Ryn activated the pod's release sequence. Gears turned, ancient mechanisms hissed, and the glass panel slowly lifted. The human inside gasped awake, eyes fluttering open, confusion and panic flashing across their face. They were male, strong, their features unfamiliar yet unmistakably human. Ryn raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. You are safe, he said slowly, adjusting his translator. The human blinked, his breathing steadying as he took in his surroundings. Where am I? His voice was hoarse, his words weighted with the gravity of centuries lost. You are on Eor, what's left of it, Ryn answered truthfully. The human's expression shifted from confusion to something else, determination. Then I have work to do. Daniel Kade's recovery was quicker than Ryn had expected. Though he moved stiffly at first, his body adjusting to movement after centuries in stasis, his mind was sharp. He absorbed information quickly, asking pointed questions about the state of the galaxy, the fate of Earth, and what had become of humanity. Ryn answered as best he could, though many of Daniel's questions had no easy answers. The galaxy had moved on, and humans were little more than myths now, their greatest achievements reduced to scattered ruins and forgotten technology. As they moved through the remnants of the underground facility, Daniel's hands traced over old consoles and faded insignias. This place was meant to be a safeguard, he murmured. A last attempt to preserve what we could before the end. If I survived, others might have too. Ryn watched as Daniel activated old systems, bringing flickering holographic screens to life. You said no one has seen a living human in centuries. That means either we all perish, or we hid well enough that even the galaxy forgot about us. I intend to find out which. Ryn admired the human's resilience. Most beings, waking up to find their entire species gone, would have crumbled under the weight of such a revelation. But Daniel Kade was different. He wasn't lamenting the past, he was planning the future. If we're going to search for more survivors, we need to start with the original stasis locations, Daniel said, pulling up an ancient star map. This vault was one of many. There were others, deep space stations, hidden planetary bases, maybe even sleeper ships. If they worked as intended, they might still be out there. Ryn examined the map, noting the faded markers spread across the sector. Many of the locations were now within regions controlled by powerful alien empires, others lay in lawless territories teeming with pirates and scavengers. Some of these places might not exist anymore, he cautioned. Wars have been fought. Planets have been destroyed. If we go looking, we may not like what we find. Daniel's gaze was steady. That's a risk I'm willing to take. The galaxy forgot about us. Maybe it was easier that way. But I won't let humanity's legacy end in dust and broken ruins. Ryn hesitated for only a moment before nodding. He had spent his life hunting relics of lost civilizations, but this was something greater than a mere discovery. This was a chance to resurrect an entire species. Then we start now, Ryn said, inputting coordinates into his ships. If any humans are still out there, we'll find them. As they stepped into the ship, the facilities, systems flickered once more, as if the past itself was stirring. The galaxy had long since moved on from the age of humanity. But perhaps, just perhaps, that age was not over. Not yet. By the time the human parents arrived, a formidable woman with arms crossed and an expression that made even feel nervous, the station was in complete disarray. The Galactic Holding Station, known for maintaining order and security, now resembled a battlefield after an unwinnable war. Custodian officers, some wrapped in security blankets, others leaning exhaustedly against walls, sat in defeated silence. Streamers hung from control panels, the security drones now functioned solely as automated disco balls, and the containment area smelled of an unholy mix of alien fruit, sugar, and something the officers simply labeled chaos residue. Weary beyond words, forced himself to stand as the human woman approached. "What have you done to my children?" she demanded, eyes narrowing. Mandibles clicked nervously. "Madam, I assure you we have done nothing to them. If anything, they have done something to us." He gestured weakly toward his officers. Van was staring blankly at a wall, whispering the words, "Never again," while another was slowly attempting to entangle himself from what looked like a makeshift net made of confiscated security belts. Your younglings have exhibited a level of, shall we say, disruption, that we were entirely unprepared for. The mother gave her children a single look, and something incredible happened. The chaos stopped. Immediately. The younglings who had been spinning an unfortunate custodian officer in a chair froze. The van trying to rewire the station's lighting system put the panel back. Even the child in the middle of constructing a fort out of confiscated supplies stood at attention. Felt something he had not in the entire past hours. "Hope. Explain yourselves," their mother said, arms crossed. The leader of the younglings stepped forward, looking thoroughly chastised. "We were just having fun." The mother's expression did not change. "Fun? You turned a intergalactic detention facility into a daycare riot." One of the younger children piped up. "We got bored. They wouldn't let us do anything, so we had to make our own entertainment." The mother sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "What did I tell you about creative problem solving in enclosed spaces?" "Only when necessary," the children recited in unison. "And was it necessary here?" she continued, was dangerously calm. The children looked at one another, then slowly shook their heads. "No, ma'am." Had faced war criminals, and creatures that could end entire civilizations with a thought, but never had he seen something as fearsome as this human mother disciplining her offspring. The younglings stood perfectly still, responding to her words with a precision that no amount of custodian training could have instilled in them. He almost pitied them. Almost. The mother turned back too, her expression softening slightly. "I apologize for any inconvenience they may have caused." Blinked. Inconvenience? His station was in shambles, his officers were traumatized, and he was fairly certain they would have to rewrite half their security protocols to prevent something like this from ever happening again. And yet, despite all of that, he found himself nodding. "Accepted," he said, because what else could he say? "We'll be taking them off your hands now," the mother said, motioning for her children to line up. They obeyed instantly, marching in an orderly fashion toward the exit. Marveled at how effortlessly she controlled them, a feat not even his officers could achieve. Before she left, she turned back to him. "You know, they really weren't trying to be a problem. They just don't do well with inactivity." Who had spent the last hours experiencing firsthand the consequences of human juveniles left to their own devices, nodded emphatically. "Yes. That has been made abundantly clear." The mother gave him a small, knowing smile before leading her children away. The officers still capable of standing saluted as she passed, their expressions filled with something between admiration and sheer relief. When the doors finally closed, sealing away the human family, silence fell over the station. Exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding and slumped into his chair. Across the control room, his officers were slowly beginning to recover, some sitting in stunned disbelief, others muttering about early retirement. "Commandant," one of them asked hesitantly. "What should we do about the mess?" Stared at the chaos around him, the streamers, the alien snacks, the security drones still lazily spinning in circles. He closed his eyes and made a decision that he knew would be enshrined in custodian policy for generations to come. "We issue an intergalactic directive. Effective immediately, no custodian facility shall ever detain human juveniles under any circumstances. Ever." His officers nodded solemnly. They had all learned a hard lesson that day, when that would be passed down through the ranks of the galactic custodians for years to come. If there was one universal truth they could all agree on, it was this: never detain human children. The galaxy simply wasn't ready for that kind of chaos.